Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's Eric Coffin. I'm coming to you from the November 2018 edition of the Mineral Investors Forum in Vancouver. I'm here with Ian Bliss. Ian is the CEO of Northern Shield Resources and their wholly owned sub Seaborn Resources. Northern Shield would be familiar to a lot of my subscribers as a nickel copper PGE explorer, which it still is. But I think the story du jour that I think is really, really interesting that these guys are developing and in fact, literally discovering. You've essentially found a new epithermal camp in Nova Scotia. I mean, Nova Scotia was not previously known as an area where we would look for epithermal gold deposits.
That is correct. In fact, as prospectors started bringing this whole property to our attention, and my initial thought of this was, yes, this is Maguma Group, and I'm not really interested in that. Not that Maguma Group's a problem, but it wasn't what Northern Shield would diversify for. But once we started seeing some of the data, we very quickly started realizing that this was, an epithermal system, and nowhere on the map or the database, or there's no knowledge of epithermal systems in Nova Scotia. Though shortly after that, the government geologists started to sort of find another area not too far away, and they were coming to a similar conclusion that there was epithermal potential in Nova Scotia. But up until then, no, it sort of came out of the blue. But even though our background isn't magmatic systems, we are quick to recognize the potential here.
And you guys, I mean, one thing it's worth noting is that Ian and Christine Vinecourt, the chief geologists, and the people that work with them. I mean, Northern Shield has, I think, a well-deserved reputation as being very strong early-stage conceptual explorers, and you're kind of doing that again in Nova Scotia. But just recently, like in the last week, I guess, you've turned what I would say is probably a very important page in that you've found this up an outcrop now.
That is correct, and we knew it was going to be, and we're always very patient with acquiring these projects to make sure they suit our criteria and what our shareholders expect. And it was a very large property, so we knew that exploration was going to have to be very methodical, especially when we're dealing with systems where the gold might not be coming to surface. So throughout the summer, it was just slowly sort of ticking over and taking one step, but every time we went into the field, we felt we progressed either by finding new gold anomalies in stream sediment samples, finding gold in boulders, and then in outcrops. So every time we returned to the bush, we've increased our knowledge and we felt taking a step. But you're right, this past week with the discovery of, first of all, very large angular boulders and now significantly sized quartz veins in outcrop, it takes a very different turn now. We know the size of the system, or get some idea of the size of the system. It's not just a few quartz veins here and there. And so, yes, we've taken a very drastic turn this past week, and a very positive one, and that's why we feel energized and ready to, okay, we're ready to take this forward much more rapidly now than we have over the summer.
And epithermal gold deposits, they are one of the major sources of gold production worldwide, but I mean, they're particularly well known in sort of Basin Range, Nevada. Carlin's not really epithermal; it's kind of a different deposit type. But there's a number of them through Central and South America. I mean, it's a well-known, pretty heavily studied system or model, and being that it is, I mean, you've got a bit of a leg up in the sense that there's probably scientific technical factors that will help you guys pinpoint where you are in the present day surface, and you got some pretty strong ideas about where you are in the epithermal system.
That is correct. From observations of the rocks to date, both the boulders and in outcrop, and this is from self-learning ourselves as well as taking some of these samples to some experts in the field. We certainly get the impression that we're on the very upper limits of the system, particularly some of the bladed calcite that we see. But we are going to be doing a little bit more research over the winter months, or early winter months, through some labs and some professors who have more knowledge on this to actually determine more categorically where we are in the system. And I understand you can use some of these features not just to find out where you are vertically in the system, but laterally to try to focus in very quickly to where perhaps more of the mineralization is.
And because the important thing here is because you think you're sort of at the top of the system, the good stuff, if you will, the sort of really high grade bonanza zone, boiling zone as they call it, that's that hasn't been eroded away. Your feeling is that's still there. It's going to be under your feet someplace.
Exactly. I mean, certainly all the indications were the upper reaches of the system, though we're still seeing gold. And actually, if you compare it to other occurrences like in Nevada, some of the gold grades we're seeing, if we are high up in the system, are extremely encouraging. But yes, the main positive aspect of it, is the gold still in the ground. It hasn't been eroded. And certainly by the extent of all these boulder fields and the outcrop we're seeing, it looks very extensive, certainly laterally and hopefully extensive in the other dimension.
Well, I mean, you just found it an outcrop, and I'm sure now that you've found those outcrops and you got your eye on it, that I expect the number of outcrops to grow pretty quickly now with crews in the field. But it's also, in a gross sense, it's a big system that you've discovered. I mean, your system scale is pretty large.
Absolutely. I mean, we're seeing boulders in the stream over a distance about 1.5 kilometers that are all gold anomalous to gold bearing. About 2 kilometers further west along the same structure, we're seeing alteration and not much quartz veining, but it's still anomalous gold, but the same pathfinders that we're seeing with the gold-bearing rocks. We still have several stream sediment samples that are highly anomalous, they up to 1,000 ppb gold, that we still haven't found either bedrock or gold-bearing boulders in that vicinity to explain that. So we know there's a lot more to be found in that immediate area that we call the highway zone, but we also have a number of other stream sediment samples to follow up on, and some gold-bearing, gold anomalous rock samples that we collected over the summer. And that now that we look at them, even though they're it's low-grade values, we almost see no gold, not even above detection limit, in most of the rocks we've collected from Shot Rock. Right. So basically, gold is the best indicator for gold. You start seeing a little bit, as we did at Shot Rock, 10 ppb, 25, and the next thing you know, you're up to 3 grams in this massive quartz vein system. So that's really encouraged us to go back and look at a few other areas where we're seeing similar chemistry in rocks, and I'm going to focus on that. So we believe there is I don't know whether it's a district scale or a camp scale, but we believe there's more opportunities outside of the highway zone itself, which is large. It's sort of 5 kilometers by perhaps in the order of 350 meters wide, based on outcrop to date. We've now expanded that by attracting some very large boulders, sort of the size of cars, to about 800 meters. So it's a very extensive system, and we think there's more out there.
And I mean, it's not a particularly difficult place to work in the winter. I mean, the winter's the winter in Canada, but you'll be able to generate a little bit of news going forward?
Yes, absolutely. And that was one of our main objectives in picking up a new project through Northern Shield for Seabourn, was to try to find projects that were more accessible year-round. As you know, we've worked a lot in northern Quebec, where the weather can be too extreme and the dirt is a problem to work in winter. So there will be a snow cover on the ground coming soon. We're trying to get as much data from the rocks as possible before then. But once that happens, we should be easily accessible to ground geophysics, airborne geophysics, and then even trenching and drilling, because the roads are right there, and there's access roads even to the top of the ridge to service these windmills. So access in winter and exploration in winter is not going to be a problem at all. So the plan is to continue moving forward very fast on advancing exploration at the Shot Rock property, particularly the highway zone.
Okay, there you have it. I mean, this is a story you absolutely want to be watching. I mean, it's a story I follow in the newsletter. I'm a shareholder. I think it's a great story. But I mean, even if you're someone that's sort of new to the sector and you're trying to get a feel for it, you don't very often see situations where a company literally makes a genuinely 100% new discovery that nobody ever worked on before, where they're actually building a model and a system from first principles. I think they've got a good shot at finding something significant here, but I think it's absolutely worth watching, simply as seeing this, this is how it's done from the ground up in the exploration business. You rarely actually see one of these situations where you're literally starting from day one. And that's essentially what Northern Shield is doing right now. So absolutely, you want to be paying attention to this story. Thanks for coming by to talk to us, Ian.
Thank you very much, Eric, and thanks for having me back.
Glad that you're here.